One of the things I've been thinking about over the last few days is the difference between rules and guidelines. And I guess this is largely prompted by the existence on YouTube of community guidelines and my apparent recent infringement of that with some videos I put up with myself naked and the subsequent flagging and taking down of some of those videos. Because, as I say, it's an infringement of the guidelines. But when people talk about them, other YouTube users, they tend to talk about it, not using the word guidelines, but using the word rules. And I think rules and guidelines are really different. They're different in how they come about. They're different in how you think of them. And I think they're different in a metaphorical sense. I know I keep going on about metaphor, but I think they are different in a metaphorical sense. And how we think about them, the metaphors and figurative thought that we use to understand what a rule is and what a guideline is, I think is behind at least some of people's differences in relation to that. Because a rule, well, the first thing to say about a rule is rules come first. Rules are usually established before the action that they're designed to modify or curtail. Rules are usually in place before there's a need for them in a way. Like if you start a new job, one of the things that you'll find out is the rules of the organisation you work for. Some of them might be very formal rules and some of them are much more informal rules of etiquette and rules of interpersonal behaviour. But they exist prior to your arrival in the situation. As I'll try and demonstrate, guidelines I think don't. But the other thing about rules is that when we talk about rules, they're like, we say things like, these are hard and fast rules. And the image of the rule, I think, is the ruled line. That's one of the metaphorical images, I think. When we talk about a rule, we imagine a ruled line, like someone's taken a ruler and drawn a line. Now that might be a line under a set of numbers which is subsequently going to add up. So the rule divides the numbers which are part of the addition from the results of that addition. Or it might be a rule under a list of names, or a rule under a piece of writing which absolutely marks the end of that. And you're supposed to know that ruled line is the cut-off point. It's a hard and fast rule. You can't cross it. It's not blurred. It doesn't make any sense to have a blurred, ruled line. It's that kind of a delineation. It marks the in from the out, the good from the bad, the okay from the not okay. It's always about that harsh division. It's about it discriminates. It's in a classical kind of algebraic sense. Or it's like a rule in the sand. Again, you can almost imagine someone putting a big ruler down in the sand and ruling a line in the sand. And that's the line that you can't cross. If you stand on this side of the line, you're okay. If you stand on the other side of the line, you're in someone else's territory and you run the risk of some kind of penalty. It's a ruled line. It's a hard and fast line in the sand. And that's, again, drawing on the image of a ruler. And the idea of a ruler, the ruler in the sense of a king or a prince or a president, something like that, or an emperor, a ruler. This is the ultimate authority, almost as if the line stops with them. You look for the chain of command, you get to them, and that's where the line cuts off. You look for the source of ultimate authority, and that source of ultimate authority is passed upwards until it reaches the ruled line of the ruler, the top line. You know what I mean? That's where it stops. So I think, as I say, rules are always about that line. But guidelines are different. Firstly, I don't think guidelines precede the use of the carrying out of the various practices that they talk to. Typically people will be doing things, and then through the doing of those things, guidelines become established. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't formulate a set of guidelines for something that's not happening yet, but you may well institute rules preemptively prior to any kind of behaviour, and people do all the time. But as I say, guidelines are always follow behaviour and are made by behaviour. And in this, I think guidelines have a lot in common with a certain kind of path, which I've spoken about before. And it's a path that is like a desire line. Desire lines, desire paths. Desire lines or desire paths are those informally made paths that are produced by the habit, the wear on the ground of lots and lots of people, all with relatively common aims. People leave one building, walk across the grass to get to the building across the other side of the campus, say, as a university, and because they all have a common aim, over the passage of time, passage of many feet, that path is made. But they don't all follow the same path. They're not all brought into line by a rule. No, they've got a common aim and they wander about, they meander. Some of them wander off the track, some of them walk very direct, but some of them wander quite a long way off. But all that meandering, all the variance in how how that path is actually navigated, how you do get from one place to the other, all that the kind of wisdom of all that variance is kind of captured and established by the guideline. But the guideline always stays as a guideline. You know, it's if you wanted to get from one part of the, one building to the other, and you wouldn't feel necessary, you wouldn't feel it absolutely necessary to stay exactly within the path, would you? No, you'd be guided by it. Oh yeah, this path's going where I'm going. I can wander about all over the place, I can meander. As long as I keep the guidelines in mind and I don't go too far off and I don't start walking in circles, I will eventually get more or less to where I'm going. And of course, aims change, targets change, desires change, buildings change. It may be that a door is moved in that building. It may be that the people who are flooding out of building A, instead of wanting to get to building B, want to get to building C. They change their desires a little bit, and they'll wander off the guideline. They'll wander off that path, and a new path will be established. Not because someone sets a rule down, not because someone says, don't walk along that path anymore, we're going to make a new path. No, because people walk a different way. And over time, the old path, the old desire path, the old guideline is abandoned, and new guidelines form. Not through legislation, but through usage. Particularly usage by a lot of people. So it's a completely different thing. Completely different. And treating a guideline as if it's a rule, as many people do with the YouTube guidelines, community guidelines, is forgetting, I think, that they are community guidelines. It is a desire path of a community. And the desire path of a community is one that's made up, aggregated, composed, made wisdom out of the individual desires of the users. So just to return to flagging, every time we see a video and we individually are moved to flag that video, that's kind of fine. I mean, the way that YouTube deals with flagging is a big problem. Or choose to watch a video, or choose to rate a video. We're establishing a desire path which other people can follow, and it's a guide, and it's also a guideline. And every time we forget that it's a guideline and think it's a rule, and blindly obey that rule, then we're not doing our job as a community. We're not making a wise path. We're following the line of least resistance that leads from one building to another building that we may not want to go to. We may be just falling in line behind a rule rather than making a line to the wise choices of individuals trying to establish a path for a community to follow. Make sense? I don't know. I'm watching the swallows on the golf course. They're beautiful. You probably won't be able to see them, but they're there. There are no guidelines in the air.